I believe to work with that inner critic, a couple of things. Number one, when people say things, we need to hear them, especially when there's consistency in the messaging. And the consistent messaging that I would continue to receive primarily along my professional journey was, "You're very gifted at this," whatever that this was in that moment. "You do this well. Good idea. Good thinking. What would you do?" And thus, as I continued to not
Welcome to Adapt or Die, real stories behind leaders' biggest pivots. My name is Andreas Pettersson, and you are listening to our Power Without Permission miniseries. This is the promotional work. No, I'm kidding. It's the introduction of all the amazing co-authors of the upcoming book, Power Without Permission. In each episode, we'll still follow the same three acts. We break down the flow, the main stories that are designed to move you from challenge into action. And today's episode will be a lot about action. So therefore, let me introduce you to Marlene Braga. Today's episode, we're going to discuss how she had to confront her inner good girl and started leading without permission. Welcome so much to the show, Marlene.
Thank you so much, Andreas, and to your community. It's lovely to see you and spend this time with you.
For the listeners, when Marlene and I are having discussions, we never know which direction it's going to go. I'll try to keep us on the rails, but as Marlene pointed out before we got started, what did you say? Rails are
Overrated.
okay. Well, here we go.
Unless you're traveling, then you want to stay on the rails.
I like it. We're gonna dive straight into that moment where you're up against the fence. You realize that you have to do a change. Something is going on in your mind, or your anxiety, frustrations. Like things are just not working yet. Are working, and what are the risks here of not pivoting? But walk us through the scenario, like 5 minutes before you have that realization. Where are you? What's going on?
I'll paint a picture for you of where I was at when I knew that I needed to pivot or perish. Location, Miami, Florida. Age, 18. Listless. Dull, Marlene. Languishing away. Doing precisely what's expected of her as a Cuban American young woman in Miami, Florida. I knew that I would need to leave Miami and to boldly go forth into literally a new world, or I would continue to do what was expected of me rather than to live an authentic and meaningful life. And that's when I chose to go away from Miami, to literally leave and to begin life at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., because I had always been deeply drawn to politics and political culture as a Cold War Cuban. It's in my DNA going back 2 and 3 generations. And thus, I knew that I wanted to be in a new epicenter, and that if it didn't exist, I knew that I would need to create it. So the first pivot or perish happened when I landed alone in Washington, D.C., at George Washington University, 2 blocks from the White House, Marlene with 2 big cardboard boxes of all her worldly possessions. I hopped on People's Express, and that's when I would begin the first in the series of pivots that continue to this day.
And for the listeners, I got the honors of working with Marlene here earlier this year, and I want to say last year as well, if I remember. I don't remember exactly the time frame, but
September.
she's an action taker, and there is sometimes when I'm working with people or coaching them, I have to push a lot to get change to happen. Not with Marlene. With Marlene, she and I can have a discussion, and it's like instant action. But we're gonna get back to that later on. Right now, tell me the story. What is going on, and what were the things? What would have happened? I mean, it's early in life, but how did that sort of shape all the pivots throughout the rest of your life?
Thank you for the generosity of that question, because I knew that decisions would continue to be made for me, not by my parents, but rather by these forces that would societal forces, messaging, implicit, explicit about what women are supposed to do and how women are supposed to live and how women are not even allowed to lead. We are not allowed to lead. It's a very mixed message that we receive even before we enter into the world. And so what arose for me was that I was not respectfully toward beloved friends who would stay in Miami and who would marry their high school sweethearts and would stay within a particular radius. That was just not the life that I truly believe was intended for me. That was not where I was authentically meant to go. I don't know if that answers your question.
Absolutely. And I think what I want to emphasize here is that if something doesn't feel right, it's not a matter like it's a big decision of Marlene to pick up things in 2 boxes and go. But I have to say micro action. It's a lot of people's lives go from being worse over time to becoming better by just small micro actions. And this was a little larger action, but I assume there was a lot of micro actions leading up to it. With that said, what is the next biggest pivot of your life, or what are some other major pivots that you have been through, and how are you sort of building on your past experience to be able to handle bigger and bigger action taking and risk taking?
The next big pivot for me truly would arise when I'll paint another picture for you. 1995. Was it 95? Yes, I believe. I believe it was either 1995 or 1996, where I was living and working in San Francisco as a print production manager for Gap Incorporated. Things were going very well. That was at my 5.5 year mark. But again, I started to feel that, again, listlessness, dullness, an inner ache that I couldn't quite give name to then. But quit my great job at the Gap without another job and would end up working for Steve Jobs, who some could argue changed the world.
Mhm,
Ended up working for him when his advertising agency of record needed some support for his campaign, character animation campaign with Pixar Animation Studios. And I hesitated, right? There's something called the hero's journey. You may be familiar with it from the work of Joseph Campbell. And you're trying to heed the call, the hero, the heroine, is trying to heed the call, but at the same time, you're resisting the call. Because when I was invited to participate in this project with Steve Jobs, I was like, oh my God, do I do it? Do I not do it? I just don't know. And it was beloved friends who were very close to me at that time and remain close to me to this day who were like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Of course you're going to do this. Really? Do I do it? But I don't know. And then not only would we work well together, but when he triumphantly returned to Apple because he was fired from the company that he would found, many of your listeners will know this story as well as yourselves. He triumphantly returns to Apple, and then I got a call after I had left the project with Pixar Animation Studios because Steve Jobs wanted me at Apple. Now, I would have been a very wealthy woman had I needed that call. But again, to return to like, we know that we want to change. We know that we need the change. We know that we deserve the change. And this is not just women, this is all of us. And we want to heed that call. But there's always that inner voice, right? And I know we'll have the opportunity to talk about that inner critic and that inner
no, but
voice.
let's talk about that because I think a lot of listeners here, I would say the first thing I wanna highlight is that your network help you, your connections, your friends around you, they pushed you into it because they saw what's best, and you don't always see what's best for you. The big difference is you have the inner critic in your head, they don't for you.
Excellent point.
Tell me a little bit about the inner critic.
One might argue that the inner critic is nothing more than the wounded child. The inner critic is that 5-year-old who received that first or second or third or 20th blow and started to then internalize the messaging that was distorted. And
Mhm.
once we start to integrate that distortion, there's the danger that we will magnify the distortion. That's universal to the human experience. And so, whereas I wanted to, in my earlier years, quash that inner critic, and I could see why, my goal now, as a seasoned professional who wants to always be in service to everyone, my quest now in the hero's journey, the heroine's journey, is to integrate. the inner critic, to welcome the inner critic, to let the inner critic take a seat on my lovely sofa and just relax for a while. We got this. We got this. We're good. We're good. It's a constant daily journey that I need to
Mhm.
practice every single day. I don't believe that we ever truly extinguish the inner critic.
I want to argue as well that even the people that are in the arts, the inner critic is probably more loud than for a lot of people because it's a creative process and it's always fear of judgment. I want to argue, um, but what needed to happen for you to not let the inner critic drive you, but rather like in these moments, just recognizing it's there and I'm gonna listen to myself. I'm gonna feel what I feel, but I'm in control. What would you tell the listeners they need to do to even just start that journey?
I believe that thank you for this, again, continued generosity. I believe that when people, I believe to work with that inner critic, couple of things. Number one, when people say things, we need to hear them, especially when there's consistency in the messaging. And the consistent messaging that I would continue to receive primarily along my professional journey was, you're very gifted at this, whatever that this was in that moment. You do this well. Good idea. Good thinking. What would you do? And thus, as I continued to not only rack up a series of what I would consider, and I believe many individuals in the working world and beyond would consider successes, I started to diagnose a pattern of success. And I do believe that it was my consciousness, the one that would like let go of that ego for a moment to identify that if Steve Jobs is asking me, he is asking for me to go work production at Apple. Print production at that time, or maybe another type of production. But if someone like Steve Jobs, who I admired, was inviting me into his world once again, there was obviously something bigger happening, and I needed to heed the call.
So why didn't you take it?
The reason why I did not take the opportunity to work with Steve Jobs is because I had literally just moved to New York City from San Francisco because my father was becoming more ill, suffering from Parkinson's disease, and I chose to be physically closer to my father, who was in Miami at the time. My mother was nursing him, caregiving to him, and she so generously said, "You can move to the East Coast. Please do not move to Miami because I know that you, as the long suffering, self sacrificing good girl, will forego all of your dreams to take care of your father, and I don't want that for you." And thus, I had literally just moved to New York City when I received a call from Andy Dreyfus, who now is at Pixar Animation Studios, saying, "Steve is asking for you." My reply, "Andy, I just moved to New York City. I'm unable to do so."
Yeah, and this
Andy
was
be Yeah, and Andy being smart is like, "Do you know anybody else?" Of course I did. Of course I did.
it was still the right decision, and here is why. It's always the right decision in hindsight. And I think people spend too much time regretting things that they can't change anyway.
That's a very fair point.
What would have happened if you didn't start the journey of having an active conversation with your subconscious, the good girl, and taking control of her? Where do you think you would have been today?
I truly believe that I would have been in the beautiful city of Miami, that I would have been perhaps always a beautiful thing. Perhaps I would have been married, never married, at peace with that. I believe that I would have been living a traditional, equally beautiful, a traditional life in Miami, raising a family, raising grandkids. That was not to be my journey. And it is not because of anything other than, again, the authentic Marlene always being present to help guide me through these twists and turns and pivots and opportunities above all that were offered to me, all of which I take very seriously and I'm deeply grateful for. I just happen to be at the right place at the right time a lot of the time.
Three things for the listeners. One, look at how she takes something and turn it into a positive every single time. Number two, listen to the self awareness. And number three, listen to the action taking. I guarantee you, if you do it, no matter where you end up in your life, it is the right path and you're going to be happy. What's the old story you had to rewrite though? There's something in childhood, there's something in the upbringing. You had to rewrite the story. And you talk a little bit about this in the book. And how do you have the proof that it was working?
We have all, we all come into this world with so many challenges already unfolding in front of us. And literally being a Cold War kid, there are far too many stories from history and into the future of families being torn asunder through political realities. Look at all of the wars and all of the instability happening now. But the utter sadness that my parents would experience when they left Cuba knowing that they would never see their parents again, hoping that they would. But I never met my grandparents. Thank you, merciful God, that I don't feel bitterness about it. I don't feel anger about it. Perhaps there's a sadness there that I haven't tapped into. Of course, I'm nostalgic for it. But what happened really for me, going back to that time of beginning to grow and beginning to know, is that there was a deep, deep, deep grief unfolding in the house that I was born into. Again, not through the fault of any family member, but rather the conditions that would become created and that would result in certain realities that my parents and my siblings, I'm the youngest of three kids, that we would all have to attempt to transcend together. I don't believe my parents, God rest their souls, they're both deceased. I don't believe that they were ever able to transcend that utter sadness. My sister, my brother, and I, separately and together, are working to transcend that intergenerational, right? That is just, again, part of the human condition to leave behind, to not live in the past, which is so bloody difficult, so incredibly difficult, and to identify, here I am, how do I move forward? These are big questions, the big questions, and we don't live in a society that will take those precious moments to reflect and then to contemplate, as we're doing right now. Andreas, you and I, we're contemplating in community. Right now, this community, you, myself, your producers, our listeners, our fellow advocates, we don't spend, focus group of one, we don't spend necessary time reflecting upon how we can together and separately move forward to create a more just, a more verdant, a more hopeful society. Although we're also hardwired for hope as human beings. And so I do believe that that's where we are wise to continue to dwell.
You were conditioned with a lot of things. And I really want to point this out. Yet you always move forward. Standing still is not an option. Rolling over and just accepting is not an option. And with that, I always encourage you and everyone else I talk to, tap into your emotions. Know what you feel. Listen to yourself. But don't let it stagnate in you. Don't let a fear come creeping in. And every single time you do something about it, you take action. And sometimes as we get older, it's easier to take action. I would argue I'm a fairly resilient and self aware person. With that said, I need my coaches. I need my mentors. I need my group, my community, my tribe around me that goes, WTF, Andreas. I don't know if I even can say that here on the podcast, but like, what are you doing? And I'm completely blind to it. With that said, I do have sort of a pre-game ritual, a ritual that I follow on a daily basis in order for me to stay hyper tuned in and constantly take action. Whenever fear comes creeping in, I recalibrate it to unfamiliar and let's just move forward. Marlene, what is your pre-game ritual? What is it that you do not compromise on today? So even when life is hard, you keep moving forward, you keep taking action.
When I am in that moment of not knowing what, or experiencing the fear, um, there's something in Spanish actually that helps galvanize me, and, of course, I'll translate for all of our community. There's something that's like, "Vale, vale, vale," which I translate into, it's very multi-purpose, but that is like, "Get in there, get in there." Now, now What I'm also working with is hold up, hold up, like the Beyonce song. Hold up, they don't love you like I love you. Slow down, they don't love you like I love you. Hold up, dale. Hold up, dale. Go for
Mhm.
it. Go for it.
But hyper awareness, and that's the thing. You have a mantra. I've noticed that we talked about it multiple times. You push yourself in the moment, and you and I worked through some pretty hard moments. So even that is very hard for you because of how you're wired, but in a professional context, and you push yourself through it. You have an inner voice that doesn't that turns emotions into logic. This just needs to be done. Let's move forward. At
And I'd
what
like to say something. Let me share something with you that literally just happened yesterday at Skirball, where I'm just so privileged to lead a small but mighty team of fellow programmers. And I will tell you this: the 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 push pull. Right? You have been the CEO of a successful technological company or technologically based company, but that constant push pull, right? Of knowing when to push, how to push, if to push, because not it's no longer just about me, right? When we lead teams, we are constantly having to keep in mind, top of mind, not even in mind, top of mind. How are my words affecting my public programs coordinator? How are my actions impacting my new production manager who's only been there for 4 months and is looking to me as a fellow woman? She's a Latina woman just like myself, Mexican immigrant from Huntington Park, California, east side of LA. How is she looking to me? 20 years my junior. She's looking to me for cues. How do I honor the cues? How do I honor the woman while getting the work done? And how do I push against complacency? How do I integrate the fear? How do I invite that same, I don't know, to the same couch, right? Where the inner critic is sitting. Mommy, mommy, inner critic, mommy, mommy. How do I push? And sometimes I feel I'm pushing too hard. Or do I fear that I'm pushing too hard? But in this current state of affairs, everywhere across the United States and beyond, politically, economically, creatively, socially, culturally, spiritually, why wouldn't I push? Why wouldn't I push? For a better world, for a better life, for a better colleague, for a better Marlene, for a better Andreas, for a better cat who's helping to produce this, wonderful podcast and experiment. Why would my parents flee Cuba for me to sit, which they gave me that privilege of being able to sit. I don't have to do anything right now.
Mhm.
But why would I if I have the choice to act with dignity and pride and courage and an open heart and an open mind to make the world a better place? Why wouldn't I? And what does a better place mean? It could mean putting out water for the furry creatures who come every day. That's what I do. I have to freshen the water after this podcast. Why? Because our furry creatures deserve that and so much more. So that push pull is inherent in everything we do across the day. And knowing what you have so wisely said to me, what you have so wisely said to me, you have said, build in moments of regulation. We must regulate because we are emotional creatures. And that is one thing that, especially in this society, I can't speak for another one. Now, I've worked in other societies, but I haven't lived in other societies, and that's a difference. We are not encouraged in the United States to stop. It's like, go, go, go. It's dale, 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 dale. Yes, it is. And reflect, pause, regulate, listen to your favorite song. This morning it was Miley Cyrus for me. We need to pause more. We need to reflect more. We need to regulate. You and I were just talking about that 2 days ago.
Yeah, no, people go on autopilot and they get into their habits, and all of a sudden, 5 years have gone in the wrong direction. And uh, one of the one of my favorite quotes, it's Stoicism philosophy, but memento mori. Death is not an end station. You die a little bit every day. You die a little bit every day. You choose to go in a direction that only leads to regrets later in life, and the only way you stop that is having moments throughout the day, or really doing a quick self check-in. Where am I at? What am I feeling? What am I experiencing? Okay, let's take action on that. Let's not do let's say no to these things. It's always a balance. I do think that, like you said, the society, the expectation on people today forces people to go on autopilot. I'm going to put in a little plug here for the book Power Without Permission because this is super relevant. And if you want to sign up for the book launch, it's at leadersadapt.com/book. It's on September 25th. In that book, one of the main reasons why this book has been written, and we're going to get back to what it actually means. And Marlene is a co-author in here talking about action, talking about her life, talking about the hyper awareness and how she's fully in control of her life today. Um, One of the main reasons for writing the book is partly on this topic. I see so many people, Marlene, that are conditioned to do certain things, are acting on autopilot. And I realized that I need to learn from all of you. And this is why I invited 13 co authors, all powerful women that all have gone through their struggles. And I've learned a lot from you guys, working with you, knowing all of you. And sort of I've seen the pattern. And especially if we're now pivoting to the woman, and we're gonna talk about being of service to yourself versus being in service of to others. Especially for in terms of awareness. What I've seen is that a lot of women, uh, not only are they on autopilot because society and chores and not everything that sort of is expected of them to be the good girl, but on top of that, a lot of women are conditioned with the we mentality, the service
Yeah.
mentality, and not the
Yeah.
I mentality. And I think that's why we see a lot of unfairness higher up in organizations today. I think US is ranked like 40 or 50 in the world in terms of equalness between men and women. But now I'm pivoting over back to the question to you related to this. Um, how do you balance the difference between being of service to others versus of being in service to yourself? And what time in your life did you realize I got to be more of service to myself rather than others? Because otherwise, I will burn out, I will lose all my energy, so I can't be of service to others.
Being of service to others, and I was gonna say versus being of service to the self. I believe that it's not an either or. I believe that you can do both. And every day, every single day, I'm still experiencing moments where I see myself being overly of service to others and underserving myself. So I'm over functioning on behalf of others and under functioning on behalf of myself. So I can tell you as recently as 2 days ago when I was doing it, when I realized it. So I realized in childhood that I was serving others, but I was so over identified with the wounded healer, right? So those of us who follow the work of Carl Jung, and I do, and I have tremendous respect for the work that he has developed, but that wounded healer who has sought control, who has sought validation through helping others, I experience that every single day, and it's led to burnout. It's led to my having to bottle up the pleaser, as you well know. It comes right back to that self awareness, Andreas, to stop that pause and say, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. There was a couple of weeks ago whereby, so when did I realize it? 2 weeks ago, I was overly in service to a band that arrived at Skirball, and it had a need, that band. It was a legitimate need. It was one that required the institution to stretch more than ideally we perhaps should have. Did I deliver a success? Yes. Yes. Did it affect service to self? Yes. I didn't know it then. That's the thing about that deeper understanding of when we're doing what we're doing. And so to have that moment of understanding what potentially not only hurt the institution is fine, absolutely fine. I'm happy to report. There was no blowback, but there was an emotional blowback on me. And thus I have learned through one particular incident, I have learned that there has to be there has to be, a settling that's more balanced. And it's for me, who was trained to be a good girl, and I think many, many listeners will identify with that sensibility and sensitivity because of just the power dynamics, implicit, explicit, but it is constantly, constantly showing up, that, that wounded healer. So I'm just in the earliest stages of examining how I can work on that.
You are still hyper aware, and the main difference between you and 90% of people I meet, 95, is that you take action. And I just want to summarize this part of the podcast by saying that once again. Most people do not take action. They become aware of the emotion. It leads to anxiety. It leads to frustrations. It leads to burnout, leaving a job they shouldn't have left, or staying at a job they should have left. Like all these, all these items happen because they're not taking action. Nothing will change unless you take action. Marlene, if you could talk to yourself, you could talk to um, a good girl in their early 20s, late 20s, early 30s. What would you tell them? What would you do different if you could just tap straight into their brain right now and just whisper something to them? What would you tell them?
Yeah, it's so exciting, the thought of being able to whisper in someone's ears like the muse, right? Who I'm constantly in communion with. I think that we women, especially when we're coming out of the gate, nice and strong and energized, and that doesn't go away. It really doesn't go away. It's part of the DNA of every soul. But doubt is the oppressor of the people. Doubt will keep us cramped and insane our whole lives. Acknowledge doubt, honor honor that part of the process that will always introduce doubt and fear of being vulnerable, which is among the most essential human component that keeps us cramped and insane. This doubt will kill us. This doubt will kill you. Doubt will kill you. Doubt and fear are kissing cousins. Fear creates doubt. We must dwell in those spaces to examine what we're experiencing and then to move forward. Honor it, own it, forward.
Powerful. So incredibly powerful. And if you take away anything from this, dear listeners, that is it. Honor it, but do something about it.
I'll tell you one more thing though. Hold up, there's one more thing, and thank you for that. There's that band. Say again. Hold up. I'll send you the song. You know the other one? Big one. You and I have talked about this. Big one. Big one for women because of your point. We are trained to be in service to each other. Shame. Shame. What is my shame? What is your shame? What is the collective shame? So what I would also say to a young, powerful woman baller, oh boy, are there billions out there everywhere. No shame. Your shame? Their shame? No shame. Another oppressor that'll keep us cramped and insane.
You have the power already. Just go. Okay, let's move over to rapid firing question here. I'm going to ask you questions. First thing that come to your mind. With you, I'm not worried about that. It's very improv with you. So here we go. What's one belief you retired?
I have retired the belief, this is so huge. I have just retired the belief that things must be perfect.
Good one. Good one. Tell me a little bit more because I'm curious.
I think it's about power more than perfection. And I think that the perfection resides in the power. And as long as we are living lives, if as long as we are living our lives through the most authentic lens that we can, and it's a process, it is a lifelong journey, there we want to dwell in that power. And that is perfection. So we're working against ourselves and we don't even know it. Some of this is heady. Some of this is big. This is big think. Yet it's also very basic, right? The concept of power related to energy and vibration and frequency that we are always surrounded by was Nikola Tesla who was talking about vibration, frequency, energy. It's swirling around us. That's when we pick up, especially those of us who are tasked with managing the extraordinarily powerful component of living that is empathy, empaths, right? We will soak up the shame. We will. We'll soak it up. And that's what will that creates the conditions for the perfectionistic behavior. That is really you're doing a dance with the devil there with perfection, and I've recognized that now.
Awesome. A rule that you broke but the outcomes were better.
What is a rule that I broke and the outcomes were better? I left my job without another job, and I would end up working for Steve Jobs.
Boom, take the risk, just do it. Things will always get better, and you don't know what opportunities you're missing unless you're making a change. What does power without permission mean for Marlene?
Power without permission is freedom. Exercising our God-given or universally given power without seeking permission is living in accordance with the laws of nature, which is a classic Stoic philosophy that I so have come to embrace thanks to the work that you and I are doing.
Yeah, thank you. What's a micro ritual you do before having a really hard conversation with someone?
Before I speak to someone about something that's potentially difficult, and this is unfortunately happening every day, or for the better, really, because when we have difficult conversations, if we can be there for ourselves and one another, be there for yourself. Don't abandon Marlene. That's something that I say, Marlene, don't abandon me.
Oh,
I say that to
so
myself.
so incredibly important, and people tend to forget that, especially people of service. That's beautiful. Great reminder. Finish the sentence. If you don't adapt, you.
If I don't adopt Andreas and community, I perish. My soul, my essence, my consciousness, which is what I truly believe we are all seeking, is just to be in the experience. I will perish.
Beautiful. Aline, thank you so much for coming today. Very deep and very meaningful. I really hope that the listeners could relate to it. And if you didn't, go back and listen again because there is nuggets in here. There's a lot of gold. Where can people find you, Marlene?
Thank you for the opportunity to just be a part of this wonderful experiment because ultimately everything is. Ultimately everything is. And just so thrilled to be able to offer any insight and support and love along the way. I'm always at Skirball Cultural Center, which is located on Sepulveda Boulevard in Los Angeles. Um, I can always be reached via LinkedIn, Marlene Braga. There are always ways to find me. I will never retire my New York City uh, cell phone number, 347 eight two zero
You
one
should not
two
do
four
that.
three. Uh, but it's not as though I have anything better to do. I don't have to pick up any dry cleaning. So let's all figure this out together, and we can grind our teeth, but we don't need to do it in the dark alone. We can grind our
Beautiful.
teeth in
Beautiful.
communion.
Thank you so much for listeners listening into this. Marlene, thank you so much again. And please remember to go to leadersadapt.com/book. The book is called Power Without Permission, and it's the perfect guide for women who want to take control of their lives, become a better leader. And it's full of stories of these amazing women like Marlene who have taken full control of their lives and got the benefits from doing so and living a happy and long, purposeful life. Please remember also to leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. You're helping another entrepreneur, you're helping another leader, or you're helping an up and coming career woman who want to better understand how to overcome some of the challenges. For everyone else, remember in leadership, we adapt or thrive or we don't survive. Until next time.